Welcome to the Living Out podcast, helping people, churches, and society talk about faith and sexuality.
Hello, it's Andrew here for the latest episode of the Living Out podcast. An exciting episode because we today are starting a new series. We are engaging in this series with Objections. We here at Living Out believing what we might call the historic Christian sexual ethic, that sex and marriage are reserved for lifelong unions of a man and a woman. But we know that others view things differently and raise questions and objections to that kind of perspective. So we thought it'd be good to take a series to think about engaging with some of those objections, and also to think about how we can disagree well and how we can love well in the midst of disagreement. And today, in this first episode, we're going to particularly focus on those last bits. How can we engage well with objections and with those who raise them? And I'm thrilled to have a conversation around that theme. I've got two excellent guests with me, both of whom are returning guests to the podcast. We've got Preston Sprinkle over in the States and Katherine Brown here in the UK. Maybe you could both just say a quick hello and remind listeners of who you are in case they've not met you before. Preston, welcome back. And maybe you could go first.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be back. And I was just talking to somebody a few minutes ago. They're like, hey, what podcast are you on? I said, well, it's kind of like this partner ministry, sister ministry of the things we do here in the States. So I always feel a lot of camaraderie with you guys at Living Out.
That's lovely. Thank you. It's good to have you here. And where are you based, remind us?
Idaho, the lesser known state in the 50 United States.
Very good. Very nice. And Katherine, hello. Welcome back. Remind us who you are.
Hello, Andrew. Yeah, I'm Katherine. I live in Sidcup, the armpit of England, as some people have heard me say before. And I work for the Evangelical Alliance on the Being Human team, looking at the question, what does it mean to be human? And same-sex attraction is part of my story.
Brilliant. Thank you. We're thinking today about how you can disagree well. So I thought it'd be fun first to think about what are our most unpopular opinions, those that really maybe rattle those around us. Preston, do you have an answer for this? Any unpopular opinions?
Well, I have quite a long list, so I'm trying to narrow it down. And the first one that comes to mind is probably not terribly unpopular for your UK audience, but it is for my US audience. And my unpopular opinion is that I don't believe the United States is the hope of the world.
Oh, okay.
I am a very good citizen. I pray for my leaders, but I do think patriotism and nationalism can be damaging to our witness. And the people who hold this opinion with me in the United States, we kind of keep it on the down low because it is quite unpopular here.
Okay, well, different context here. You're probably a bit more safe with us today. That is good. Katherine, do you have anything that comes to mind?
I mean, it's crazy. Exactly the same unpopular opinion as Preston. No, I'm just kidding. Mine's not as deep as that. My unpopular opinion is that ketchup is the worst sauce.
What?
It should never have been invented. It's awful.
Oh.
Wow.
It can't be worse than Vegemite. Although I don't know if Vegemite is an actual sauce, but wow, that's...
I mean, we don't really do Vegemite. We do Marmite, which is basically the same thing. And that will be way more controversial than what you said about America. You will have lost a lot of friends.
Wow. I'm just a bit stunned, Katherine. I know we're meant to be learning how to disagree well today, but I feel like, I don't know how to disagree well with that.
Every pub I've been in the UK has loads of ketchup everywhere for their fish and chips and
I feel like it's a cultural obsession, yeah.
I know, we love it, but it's awful. It's terrible. It's a terrible sauce. What's your unpopular opinion, Andrew, to distract from mine?
Wow. Well, mine's also food related. I just don't get the fuss about steak. Why are people so obsessed with steak? It's just a bit of meat. It's so boring. I'm like, most people think steaks is like most amazing, like luxurious food. I'm like, what a waste of a good meal.
You come to Idaho and I'll try to change your opinion with my
That's a good deal. Yeah.
That opinion will save you a lot of money though, Andrew, so fair play for the wallet.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. That is good, I guess. Yeah, maybe I should just stick a load of ketchup on it and that might make it better, you know.
What a way.
Okay, I'm not sure we're disagreeing well, so let's move on. Let's pause, and we'll jump in with some real advice on how to disagree well in just a moment. So we're at the start of our series on engaging objections, and before we get to some of those objections themselves, we thought it's really important to consider how can we actually engage well. Think about some principles for that. And actually the first question I want us to think about together is the why question. Actually, why should we even bother engaging with objections? I think some people would think it's a waste of time, or might say, I don't know, the truth doesn't need us to defend it. What would your kind of response be to people who raise those thoughts, or just ask the question, why bother engaging with objections?
I would say if you engage objections, it certainly adds credibility to the viewpoint that you hold. If you're unwilling to engage, it gives the impression that you're not really confident in the view that you hold. So yeah, I think that would probably be the main one for me. Your view will look much less credible if you just ignore or refuse to engage in the objections. Of course, the manner in which you engage these objections is essential. And I know we're going to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, and I would zoom out even further. I'd say if you are, having conversations with people and objections are coming up, what a wonderful thing. You are being confident in sharing that you're a Christian, that you hold certain beliefs, and people feel able to then object to that. I think that is a sign of, one, good friendship, and two, your courage just to tell people that you're a Christian and to talk about topics that maybe people don't often talk about. So I'd say if you're in a conversation with someone and they raise an objection, you of course have a decision to just end the conversation there, but that would be slightly strange. So if you're already there, continue the conversation.
Yeah. And then I would jump off that and say, I then think those conversations can often be really helpful for us, not just for the person we're engaging with. Actually, I think my confidence in what I believe about sexuality, that confidence just been talked about, has actually been grown and strengthened through engaging with objections and just thinking more deeply. And actually, I think we can be quite scared of doing that sometimes, but actually I think in the long term it's kind of protective in the sense of it's like working out a muscle. It strengthens what we believe, or it's like putting down roots actually to our beliefs. And I think it can be really helpful for us to think more deeply by engaging with different objections, so that we can really kind of own and have confidence in what it is that we really believe. I guess I'd also throw in the fact of I want to engage with objections because I have confidence that what we believe is true and is good, and actually I want to be equipped to help people to see that. And I think some of the objections people raise and questions people raise often are understandable. Often, we'll come back to this, I'm sure, there are good motivations behind some of them. And they're people who want to find truth and want to find good ways of living for them and for those they love. And I believe that in what God says, we've got that. So I want to be able to engage with objections so I can be kind of effective in helping people to see the goodness. So it's not just a kind of defensive thing. It's definitely not a kind of we need to or want to win an argument thing. Actually, we want to win people to truth because we love those people and believe truth is good for people ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, I think also engaging objections, it helps you to understand the truth better. If our goal is simply to be right, then we might be scared of certain objections that we can't respond to. But if our goal is to be true, not just to defend whatever position we have, but to actually get closer to the truth, I found over the years, and many others have, that engaging objections helps refine your viewpoint. Maybe there's things in the objection that you haven't considered. Maybe even if the objection doesn't completely overthrow your current viewpoint, but it does help you think, how would I respond to that? And what are some holes in my belief system? And that should be something we should welcome. Again, our goal isn't just to defend our viewpoint at all costs, but to get closer to the truth, and engaging objections certainly helps with that.
And on the other side, when I think about when I wasn't a Christian and I had all sorts of objections to Christianity, and particularly around the area of sexuality, I had lots of things that I thought and not any place to discuss those things or to have those things challenged or to have someone listen and go, have you thought about it this way? What about this? And that could have been a very helpful process for me to go through. And so now when I am engaging in a conversation with someone who has objections, I try and remember what I was like and how helpful it could have been for me to have someone sort of push back a little bit and engage a little bit on those objections to help me see, actually, there's a different way of thinking about this, and there might be truth in some of this Jesus stuff, and it might be bigger than what you see it as.
That's good.
That's hugely helpful, I think, yeah. And what about then another thing I think people sometimes raise when we think about objections, engaging with them, this kind of idea that swirls around in our culture that you can't simultaneously disagree and love. That actually to disagree with someone is inherently not loving you can't love. And I think that makes people nervous about disagreement and about engaging with different perspectives in our culture. What's your response to the idea? What have you found a helpful way of thinking that through or engaging with that, which in itself is almost an objection, the idea you can't disagree and love at the same time?
I mean, that is a prevalent opinion. I mean, in my context, especially in the U.S., with the political situation, I mean, everything is so divisive and volatile, and so there is a growing number of people that feel like I can't actually be in relationship or love somebody that I disagree with, and that's unfortunate because that's just not realistic. I mean, it's just that's not real life. Like, it's certainly not, a real relationship. A real relationship is where you love somebody even if you don't see eye to eye on every single point. And certainly questions around sexuality are extremely personal, or very pertinent, or very important. And so this makes disagreement more challenging. But man, it's so incredibly beautiful. Like when I talk to, for instance, a gay person who was raised in a church and maybe left the faith, and they just had a horrible church experience, and they have parents that are still very conservative, very steeped in the church, and they still are able to love each other and respect each other's viewpoints across this great chasm of disagreement. Like that's a beautiful thing. That's an absolutely stunning thing. And when people look on and see that kind of relationship, there's just something deep in our humanity that says this is good. This is beautiful. So yeah, we to get along in a diverse society, we just have to be able to love across disagreement.
Yeah, for sure. And it is just such a strong cultural story, isn't it? That like you do not love me if you don't hold the same viewpoint as me. And I think in England, we're probably less likely to get angry at someone's face or shout at them or do anything loud like that, although some people will. But what I see as a very common way of showing someone that they no longer want relationships, they'll sort of quietly cancel them. So unfollow them on social media, stop replying to messages, they'll just ghost them. And you're thinking, is the reason they're ghosting me and not showing up to this social event I've invited them to because of something I've posted online or because of a conversation we had, that actually they didn't share that they disagree, but now they've decided to sort of end the friendship. And that can be just as painful and just as challenging because you don't even have the opportunity to disagree well and to engage in that conversation well. So I think that can be hard. But I do think as followers of Jesus, we have an opportunity to model something so countercultural, even just in our friendships, in our church circles. So being friends with people that aren't just like us, that don't hold the same views on absolutely everything, that have different backgrounds and understandings. And I think that it is a powerful message to the watching world of we can actually form friendship with different people, and you're not going to see a gathering like this anywhere else in the world. And I think that's a great starting place, is looking at our own friendships.
And that's showing something of Jesus to people, isn't it, actually? Because how do we know you can disagree and love? Well, could we see it in the person of Jesus in the Gospels? He's definitely not walking around agreeing with everyone, but he comes to love the world and does love the world, will engage with everyone. And that thing, I think, separating, you can disagree and not love. You can disagree unlovingly, but Jesus shows us you can disagree lovingly. You can disagree in love, and even actually, of course, as an expression of love, actually holding on to truth, even when it results in disagreement with someone. When it is truth, it is an act of love, actually, because we believe truth is good, as we've said, and truth is for people's flourishing. And so I think just as Christians, our model wants to be, how does Jesus do it? He does hold on to truth, but he disagrees in a loving way, in love, and he shows us that's possible. And as you're saying, Katherine, we then kind of get to show some of that to the world, actually show a different way, which, increasingly is needed in very kind of polarized times. We get to show a different way of doing that. Before we dive in with some principles, last thing I wanted to get us reflecting on in this half is just to think about our own experiences. Have you experienced, is it possible to have healthy and helpful conversations with those we disagree with? In your experience of engaging with people in disagreements around sexuality, have you actually found that to be a possibility?
Absolutely. Certainly not in every case. But yeah, I have several relationships with people that we disagree. Sometimes it might be a minor disagreement on areas around sexuality, gender, and so on. But sometimes it's a very serious disagreement. And when both of us are truly respecting each other and seeing each other's humanity, and not taking the other person's disagreement personally, like it's a threat to my existence, it's a threat to my viewpoint, then it can be a beautiful relationship, even if two people disagree on something as important as sexuality, there's loads of points of agreement on all kinds of other areas that you can find. I mean, we are all common humans. We all are, hopefully trying to seek the truth and trying to live as good people in the world. And if we don't have to always just focus on the areas that we disagree. And I find that when we engage each other and find points of agreement in other areas, then that can really foster a healthy relationship as well.
I was thinking your podcast, Theology in the Raw, Preston, you have some good conversations, I think, on their modelling, actually. There can be disagreement, but actually we can disagree and engage well. And my little kind of example people I was going to listen to is I had a conversation a few years ago now with a Church of England minister called Charlie Bell, who is affirming of same-sex marriage. It was an episode of the Unbelievable podcast. And lots of people commented to me after that. The one thing that was really helpful about that episode was it was modelling an actual ability to dialogue healthily, honouringly, lovingly across very significant differences of position, actually. And so I was encouraged by that, both that it's possible, but also things like those podcasts and many episodes of Preston's podcast, Theology in the Raw, are, I think, models and examples so we can hear that in action as well.
Yeah, for sure. And in like real life situations as well, like I definitely can go well. I've had many moments where I've handled it badly, where I've got frustrated, where I've bottled it and actually haven't shared the truth in the way I should. So I've done the two extremes, but there have been some times more recently that I felt like that was a good conversation. We disagreed well. And one of them, I was at a wedding recently and got chatting to this girl. And she said, she's a Christian. I was like, great, where do you go to church? She's like, here, but I'm thinking about leaving. Why are you thinking about leaving? Well, they've said that this is their stance on sexuality. I was like, oh, that's interesting. She's like, yeah, I land in a more liberal place and I just don't think I can be in that church. And so I asked her about, her story and sexuality isn't part of her story, but she has lots of friends that are part of the LGBT community. And so her biggest worry was the church isn't going to be a safe place where I can invite my non-Christian friends, and I'm desperate for them to know Jesus. And so in that moment, I have a decision, like, am I going to share my story and potentially like have her hate me or walk away from this without having shared anything and just leaving her in the place she is. So I shared my story, and to be honest, it was a little bit awkward. I felt awkward sharing it. I could see she was finding it really awkward, and her response was, I've never heard a story like that, and I'm so pleased that you have found the church to be a good place. And that hasn't changed my perspective on how I've landed theologically, but it has made me think. And I was like, great, at least it's made you think. That's great. And then we chatted about loads of other things, dresses and, sports and whatever. But, I was like, I'm glad that I felt able to share. Now, how she will reflect on that conversation with her friends and with the people around her, I don't know. But I felt like we've disagreed well in this moment.
That is such an encouraging story. Thank you for sharing.
Sorry to interrupt this edition of the Living Out podcast, but I'm here to tell you about our first ever book that we've published, and it's called A Better Love. And it contains 18 stories of meeting Jesus in the tension of faith and sexuality. We've written it, like so much of what we do, to share our stories of the goodness of Jesus and of how he helps us live for him today. You'll meet so many of my friends in this book. You'll benefit from hearing their perspectives, their stories of the better love they found in Jesus. It'll be a great read for you if you're a Christian. It'll be a great read for you if you're not yet a Christian but want to find out how people who are same-sex attracted can meet Jesus in that tension of faith and sexuality and discover life to the full in him. Go to our website and the shop on it to get hold of a copy. It's available both as a physical copy here in the UK and as an ebook further afield. Enjoy.
So we've established, I think, that it is worth engaging objections, that we can love across disagreement, that it is possible to do this well. Let's begin to think about how we do it well. Preston, I'd love to come to you because we were really thinking, or when we thought about this series, we immediately thought of your book, Does the Bible Support Same-Sex Marriage? And the opening chapter there is exactly on this. How do we have healthy conversations? I think it's How to Have a Fruitful Conversation is the chapter. And you talk there about 7 principles you found helpful, which you then apply in the book. Maybe you could pick 1 or 2 of those and just talk us through the principle and why you think it's helpful and important as we engage with objections.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. That chapter is really, I mean, it took me a long time in my journey to be able to understand and apply the principles I end up talking about. I mean, I'm naturally a very left-brained, very academic type person. And for so many years, I thought if I can just give a superior intellectual argument that's logical, that has all the facts, I could just change people's minds. And through years of seeing that normally doesn't work, people are rarely argued into the kingdom, or argued into seeing things the way you do. So it was really through years of failing in having profitable conversations that led me to do some more research and thinking on this topic. So, I talk about several principles in that first opening chapter. One major one, probably the most important one, is when you're engaging people across disagreement, you have to be a curious person. Like, I don't care what their viewpoint is. Can you demonstrate some level of curiosity in understanding their viewpoint, not in order to refute it? People know when you're listening just to find the hole in their argument and refute it. And that's just, nobody wants to be put in that spot. I don't want to be put in that spot. If somebody is listening to me and they have that skeptical eye, they're just looking for, or I can just tell they're not really hearing me. They're just wanting space to chime in and disagree with me or show me why I'm wrong. Like, you can feel that. And if you put yourself in their shoes and you know how that feels like, then why would you think that works on the other side? Why would you think that if you're just there trying to refute their argument, that's gonna, do anything? I mean, their walls are just gonna go up. They're not gonna listen. They're not gonna entertain anything you have to say if you're not willing to do that to others. So yeah, number 1, be a curious person. And number 2, ask good faith, honest questions, not interrogative questions, but honest questions. Again, these two kind of go hand in hand. Like, if you are a curious person, you will be genuinely interested in understanding the other person's viewpoint. And man, when I, again, just flip it around, when I'm on the receiving end of that and someone is like, I truly want to understand your viewpoint, like I'm genuinely interested in what you believe and why you believe it. Like, when I'm on the receiving end of that, oh my word, I feel so loved and honored. And I feel like this is a person worth talking to. And then what happens is I return that posture, right? I mean, if they're genuinely interested in what I have to believe, then and then, when there's a break in the conversation, I'm like, well, tell me about what you believe, So I think if your goal is to simply refute the other person's viewpoint, it's 9 times out of 10, it's not going to go anywhere productive. But if you're a genuine, curious listener, man, that's just the recipe for having a fruitful conversation. There's other principles I could talk about, but I would say those are two of the foundational ones that I've learned over the years.
Yeah, it's so good, thank you. And it kind of reminds me of that phrase, which makes it a bit cheesy, but it's true, isn't it? We're trying to win a person, not winning an argument.
Yeah.
And actually that totally changes it. How you win an argument is just quite, clinical, get low bullet points, and just kind of smack down arguments. But actually winning a person is much more holistic, I think. Actually, and that thing of asking good questions and the flip side of that, being a good listener. Likewise, we'll all have experienced that of when someone's just not listening, and so you don't feel any inclination to actually listen to them, but actually just really giving space to really listen lots. And I always say to people, listen lots before you say anything, partly because actually that's going to give you understanding to respond better, but also people who felt listened to are much more likely to listen. And also I think listening does something which communicates that thing of, I care about you, and your exact perspective and your exact story and experiences and where you're coming from. I don't just care about winning an argument. You can easily go in and think, oh, you're raising this objection, I know the answer to that one. That's my risk. I get out my bullet points. This objection. Okay, that's these bullet points. When actually, no, you're an individual. You matter as an individual. And, the reason why you raise that particular objection, that really matters. Actually, your background, your story, your experience, the things you really care about, they matter. And I think the listening well thing value someone as an individual. It helps someone feel, oh, I'm being loved even in this moment of disagreement. I'm being seen and valued as an individual. I'm not just being seen as an argument to be kind of, shot down or won or not.
It also shows that you're not insecure about your beliefs. People think, well, wait a minute. I could almost hear somebody on the other side thinking, well, wait a minute. Doesn't that open you up to being proven wrong? Doesn't that show that you don't really believe what you believe? It's like, no, it's actually the opposite. If you're very curious about somebody else's viewpoint and that person knows you don't agree with it, it shows much more confidence in your viewpoint when you're much more willing. Hey, I'm genuinely curious about another viewpoint, and I'm not threatened by that. If you're threatened by being genuinely interested in somebody else's viewpoint, that just ends up looking very insecure, that you don't actually aren't actually confident in your current beliefs because you're threatened by even listening to another belief.
And I know in my life, like in the moments where I've got this wrong, where I haven't listened well, are probably the moments where I have felt insecurity, or I've sort of steeled myself for the conversation. I know this is going to come, and then they're going to raise this, and I want to say the truth, and I want to honor God, and I want to be obedient to him, and all of this. And I can put all this pressure on myself, which God has never put on us, to feel like I need to be the one to convince them or to change their thoughts on this. And I just feel like in that, the listening and the extending curiosity to people puts us back in our rightful place of, we are not God. We cannot control people. We cannot save anybody. It is the Lord who saves, and he is, he's got a rescue plan for every single person, and he'll put us in these positions to be his hands and feet, to listen to people well, to ask good questions. And then if we're given an opportunity to share something about him in a non-combative way, without the stealing and the pressure, stealing ourselves and the pressure of like, I have to get this perfectly right or else it's all failed and it's all gone wrong. So I know that it's that lie that I can believe that then makes me not be curious and not listen.
That's really, really helpful. One of the principles I want to highlight, because one I find so helpful, is where you talked about finding some point of agreement. There's likely to be something you agree with. And what I've noticed is really helpful. It's very often, I think, one of the levels of agreement is in kind of underlying values, underlying principles. So often an objection will come from a good desire to love people, a good desire to see people's well-being and flourishing, or a good desire for justice. And it's really good sometimes to notice the points of agreement, to kind of bring them into the light and to observe, we both really care about justice. We both really care about people flourishing. I think we do disagree on how we're going to get there. So let's talk about what it is. But it's really helpful to know I want what you want as well. And particularly when some people in some contexts will come into a conversation thinking that because of the beliefs we hold, we are just kind of fundamentally unpleasant people. Actually, if we can show, even if you think my beliefs are really unpleasant, the reason I think they're good is because I think they achieve this good thing that you also want, is kind of beginning to build a bridge. I'm not so different from you. I care about the same things as you, even though I have a different idea of how we get there. And then you've actually got a better, I think, foundation for a fruitful conversation of the difference is actually in the how we get there, not in the what we want. And so I think not rushing to the engaging in the objection and rushing to the disagreement, which is often what we see most clearly, but thinking, where do we agree? And for me, I find it helpful often to stop and think, where is this objection likely coming from? What's the good value or desire behind this? And that's usually something we can affirm and can agree with.
Yeah, we see that a lot around June every year with, the Pride Month and Pride parades and stuff. And I've had to, it's easy for us to reject wholesale everything about LGBTQ pride and pride parades. And there's certainly many things that I would reject and find, contrary to the Christian way. But there are things like, a concern for high suicide rates among LGBTQ youth. Well, that any Christian should be concerned about that. Like, that is tragic. And we can dissect the origin and source and the reason for that, whatever, but we can join arms in agreeing with anybody who is like, I am not happy with people committing suicide. Or even like the, I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but in the US, there's a massive problem with homeless LGBT youth. Oftentimes, kids raised in really conservative households are kicked out of the home when they come out as gay or lesbian or trans, and they wander the streets homeless. They oftentimes fall into drugs or other things, and oftentimes that leads to suicidality too. And again, we can maybe have differences of how to go about that or why that happens, but can we not all as humans just say, wow, that is not good for a 16-year-old to be on the streets. My heart mourns for that, and I would love to help address that issue. So you could pick almost any issue and you could probably find some area of common ground. And going back to what I said earlier, like when you do show that you are trying to find areas of common ground, that just shows that you are being a genuine person, a good faith listener, that you're not just trying to win an argument, not just trying to refute every single thing they say. So yeah, I think, finding some points of agreement is a good way to bridge the conversation.
And I was thinking as well, thinking bigger picture, if we as Christians were better at working for the good of people and, engaging with, say, some of the heartbreaking realities out there, and if in a sense we were demonstrating our love in those aspects, then I think actually our intellectual agreements would be less difficult for people. I sometimes make the point of people might think your beliefs are utterly unloving, but actually if they experience the fact you love them, that's something different, that kind of really baffles them. And our colleague Andy often talks about the need to baffle people we hold these seemingly really horrible beliefs, but yet we're the best friend, neighbour, colleague, so actively loving towards people, that it kind of leaves people with this big question mark, which is a chance for us to then point them to Jesus as the answer, in a sense, to the question and the question mark. We are fast running out of time. We're going to have to start bringing things to land a bit. But let me mention again, Preston Sprinkle, Does the Bible Support Same-Sex Marriage? That early chapter is really helpful with those principles. And then he goes through 21 different conversations or different questions and objections, seeking to and successfully applying those principles. It's a great kind of model of how to do this. Any other recommendations we can think of, guys, for particularly this topic of how we engage well across disagreement that we'd point people to if they want to think about this in more detail?
There's two books that come to mind that aren't on sexuality. They're just from psychologists or philosophers that deal with kind of the human mechanisms behind why we disagree over things and how to go about these conversations. The first one that I cannot more highly recommend is by Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Disagree on Politics and Religion. He's an atheist. It's not a Christian book, but man, it has been immensely helpful in terms of how to understand why people disagree. It's been really a life-changing book. And another one by Adam Grant called Think Again. And that book's, it's kind of similar, but it talks a lot about, what's going on deep down in a person when they are disagreeing. Most of the time, it's not about like affirming a bunch of intellectual arguments. Most of the time, there's deeper things going on in a person, why they hold to certain views, and if you don't understand that, you're just gonna miss a really productive conversation. So yeah, those two books have been helpful for me.
Really helpful, thank you. I think we have at least a few things on the website engaging with The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt's work, so we'll dig those out as well. Stick links in the show notes to give people a bit of a flavour of what Jonathan Haidt is saying there. Any to add, Katherine?
You know what? I actually don't have any to add. So I reckon if there's a budding author out there, they should write something about disagreeing well, Andrew Bunt. But I would I would add my endorsement to Preston's book, Does the Bible Support Same-Sex Marriage? I just found it personally so helpful for the conversations I'm having with different people about sexuality. So thanks so much for that, Preston. And would definitely recommend to the listeners to get that book and enjoy reading it.
Thank you, Katherine.
Yeah. And I think the book you're thinking of, Katherine, has been published this year, not by me. Gavin Ortland has written The Art of Disagreeing, How to Keep Calm and Stay Friends in Hard Conversations. And we recently read it as the Living Out team and then discussed it. And it is so helpful. It's really short, really bite-sized. But he talks about kindness, courage, listening, persuasion and love as kind of principles and things to have in mind. Again, it's not specifically in sexuality, but really applicable to all kinds of disagreements we might find ourselves in. A really accessible, short read, and would just, highly recommend that to anyone wanting to think in more depth about this topic. We need to wrap up. Sadly, we are out of time today. We'll put links to all the resources we mentioned in the show notes, so do take a look at those if you want to explore this further. And in the coming episodes in the rest of the series, we'll use some of these principles, try and apply them as we think about big questions and objections that people raise. And if, as we go through the series, this raises for you more questions, do let us know. We'd love to hear those questions, and we'll aim to answer them either in blogs or in future podcast episodes. You can go to livingout.org/objections, and that will give you a way to let us know your questions that have come up on the basis of this series. But what's left for me to say is a big thank you to Preston and to Katherine for joining me for this conversation. Thank you to you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, to like and rate the podcast to help others find out about it. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time to dive in with our first question and objection.